Finally, Celtic have delivered on the promise, the potential that's been building at the club over the last couple of years and brought home at least 1 point from a Champions League group stage match. It was a memorable night in paradise as we welcomed Atletico Madrid for the first time in, what I would say is living memory, certainly my lifetime. And it was one of those nights I could feel it in anticipation. It was a cold autumn night, and those are the nights where we normally experience some of that Champions League magic at Celtic Park. And paradise was full, the atmosphere was electric, and it had all the makings of one of those memorable nights that lives long in the memory of Celtic fans everywhere. I managed to get tickets to the game for a little bit of Sorare on tour, and I was there with my podcast co-host, Plastician, or Stish to all of us, along with McBride Ace, and we managed to bring Brian. And who's Brian, you might be asking? Brian won a Twitter competition. We just gave away a Champions League ticket to someone at random on Twitter. So well done to Brian. He had a great time, and it was also a great result. If you would be interested in winning a ticket next time, be sure to check out in the description of this video all the links to all my social media. Last time we did it on Twitter, next time it might be on Instagram or something like that. But be sure to follow me at Quinny3001 on any social media. And the more Sorare on tour tickets we get to give away, maybe you'll be able to win one, and you'll be there at Paradise with us as well, on the house for one of those memorable nights. But in the video today, as I am losing my voice from singing at the top of my lungs for 90 minutes, we are going to be looking at where the game was. I don't know if I want to say won or lost necessarily, because it was a draw, but how did the game pan out? What did we learn from the team? Who were the standout performers? And for me, there was about half a dozen guys that really did step up and show themselves to be true Champions League caliber players. And on top of that, I really do believe that, Matt O'Reilly was man of the match, but I don't know if you would say there was an argument or whatever, but I think Brendan Rodgers is, I don't know if you can give, you obviously can't give the manager the man of the match, don't get me wrong, but his influence on the way this game went was huge. And we're always crying out for that from Celtic managers on the touchline, is to be reactive, to be creative, and to really push the boat out to go and get the result if it's there to be had. And great performance from everyone involved from Celtic last night. So we're going over all of that. At any point in the video, if you laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel. We are pushing for 10,000 subscribers, and we cannot do that without your support, guys. So if you do enjoy the content here, please do hit the subscribe button for more. If you enjoy the content, hit a like, and hail, hail, and let's just get stuck into it. Coming into this game, we were expecting El Cholo Simeone to be his typical self, but Atletico Madrid have been gathering this reputation of maybe being a bit more attacking, maybe being a bit more goal hungry, and we definitely seen that from them. But we were hoping and expecting that although the Celtic best 11, the predicted 11 was pretty much on the wall, would the guys step up to this level against a really difficult opponent, one of the most difficult defensive units to break down in Europe when the chips were down? And really, throughout the game, as well as from all the guys that started, I think everyone that started this game, and I'd probably put Paulo Bernardo into this just because they've played so much of the match, but everyone showed that, for me, they were of the level to compete man for man against Atletico Madrid. And maybe they didn't play their best team. There's one or two guys injured, and maybe by playing Galan from the beginning, they maybe expected to be a bit more defensive. They knew we were going to be a bit more attacking. So, we did notice in the second half some players with more pace came into the game. Maybe had they started with those players, maybe a bit of a sliding door effect. But that aside, to a man, our back four, our guys in midfield, and everyone in attack, as far as our 50-50s or duels went, no one didn't look of the level. In terms of the passing, the style of play, everyone looked very slick. The main danger coming into this game was always going to be Antoine Griezmann and Alvaro Morata, who both scored in this game, as it turns out. And the big questions were going to be, in converse to that, is Liam Scales. Will he be good enough to handle the world-class, the elite attackers that could be facing you in Champions League? Can he be that Celtic-level centre-back to play in all fixtures against any opponent? And I do think overall the big man was brilliant. He didn't get caught out against fantastic movement and fantastic, decision-making and everything else that comes along with playing against, opponents like Griezmann and Morata, the challenges that they impose on you. He completed some tackles, he made lots of effective clearances and blocks as well. And just overall in the game, his passing was really good. And the thing with Scales that I've really enjoyed watching over the last month or two is if you just watched him in isolation, it's actually quite hard to tell who the opponent is. You know, is it a Champions League opponent? Is it an SPFL opponent? Because his game, his level is relatively consistent, and that's something that's been a huge character trait and presence of Cameron Carter-Vickers. Defensively, he doesn't seem to get caught out, flustered, make a rash decision too often. People make mistakes, that does happen, but I think he's got a sense of what I'm talking about. He doesn't look to be a calamity in those high pressure, high octane situations. And the big man covered himself in glory yet again. And I think after 3 Champions League group stage games, Liam Scales has got to be one of the real winners in this squad. And this game further cemented for me his place in the best 11. Now, I do feel this game was a huge step up moment for Matt O'Reilly for a few different reasons. Overall, fantastic contributions in all manners of the game, getting into the final third with penalty area entries, getting shots on target, creating some chances as well, which obviously led to the goal for Kyogo very early in the match. He's making interceptions, he's winning duels, making lots of passes, winning tackles, clearances. He's doing it all. He covers every blade of grass on the pitch without ever really breaking into a sprint. His positional awareness is fantastic, and he's got a really great team presence as well. And for 2 reasons, this was an absolutely huge game for Matt O'Reilly. Number one, Hatate goes out after 7 minutes, which really does break down and change the dynamic and the synergy in midfield, because without Hatate's energy, I think Bernardo on the ball can give you a lot of what Hatate can. Bernardo does seem to have a bit of the Neil Lennon's button, cannot pass forward in this match anyway. So that puts more pressure and more onus on McGregor and O'Reilly to pick up some of that weight to press in the front line. And the big man still completed 90 minutes and did not. Against Rodrigo de Paul, the World Cup winner, who gets sent off, I know. Against Koke, against Saul, against Marcos Llorente, against all these elite top-end Champions League players, he was clearly the best midfielder on the pitch. And this was a huge game for him to go mano a mano against these direct opponents and be in a situation of, you know, having to carry more workload than maybe it was intended when the team was announced and when the plans were laid for the match. But for me, and let's just talk about the front line real quickly. Kyogo can get all the praise that Kyogo always gets. Great goal. Could have had a hat-trick with the runs and the chances that could have been made if someone would pass him the bloody ball more than once a match. He could have been through umpteen untold times. Fantastic Kyogo performance. Total pass marks, fantastic. Palma really did change my opinion. He ran, he beat a man. His goal was fantastic, but it really did seem to, you know, I really felt like I seen a bit of a different Palma. It wasn't dramatically more mobile. He still didn't. The one man he beat was in our defensive half, but it was in a counter-attack. So it was an attacking transition, which I was happy with. But, you know, still a little bit left there to be desired. He's got undeniable qualities, and it's just about how we maximise that. But for me, Daizen Maeda played his best shirt in the hoops last night. He was absolutely faultless. I guess a bit lucky to have the assist, I think, for that ball to go all the way through to Palma. But he won possession for us. He pressed like no one else presses, like we know he can. But everything he did, if it didn't come off, like he didn't like make a mistake, if you know what I mean, or he didn't have one of those terrible crosses that just shanks into the crowd or something, he was amazing. He had his best performance by a long way in a Celtic shirt. And like one of the main questions that came to Brendan Rodgers after the match was, you know, the goal, you know, one of the earlier answers he had to a question was the first half tempo was brilliant and maybe it died away through the game. And I think we could all agree with that. And one of the journalists asked him, is the goal maybe to sustain that for 90 minutes? And instinctively, Brendan just turned around straight away and said, well, that's very hard. You know, so I think maybe some of these guys were really operating on high revs. They were really, you know, top gear, revved out, and maybe that's physically the most that those human beings can give, which puts even more pressure on the bench and the squad, the quality of that, which we're obviously trying to build because we have so many options in so many similar positions, and we're just struggling with that formula from the bench, maintaining fitness and form, and all that kind of other stuff. So I do feel that Maeda, again, clocking in another 90 minutes with that effort that he put in. He deserves so many plaudits from this game. He was fantastic. He's a huge reason that we got the result that we did. And, you know, I think if we could have kept support, because he was like towards the end, it was him, Forrest and Bernardo, and like our attack, as much as I do, we'll come on to Brendan's impact in a second, but as much as I do think the manager made some amazing changes and really took the game by the scruff of the neck, you know, I would have liked to have seen Yang, I'd have liked to have seen O. Probably before we talk about the Brendan impact, the only thing I want to say is that ref was an absolute dickhead. He was desperate. Like, I was really close to the penalty, and I was saying to the guys that I was sitting next to, I think he pointed for a penalty before the foul even happened. That's how quick he was pointing. he was pointing for a penalty as soon as the guy entered the box. He was itching to give it. He was desperate to do it. And I know we got a kind of fortuitous red card, but that ref he gave us nothing in terms of those 50-50s. He let play run a few times, and you think, okay, he's going to let quite a bit run, but not always for us. And some of the things he was giving them fouls for, it was just so inconsistent. That's what boils your blood as a Celtic fan. So when that penalty was awarded, you just felt it in your bones, didn't you? As this is how the script goes. Joe Hart saves the pen, top notch to him, but unlucky with the rebound going in. So yeah, just wanted to put a wee note in there for the ref. But to really get the full grasp of how Brendan's kind of affected this game, as you can see, overall, we finished up with 53% possession. I'm losing my voice, guys, while I was singing last night. We get 6 total shots, 3 of them were on target, and we got so many more touches in the box. We made so many more chances compared to Feyenoord and Lazio. There was a markable improvement on this performance versus the 2 that have went before. And on top of that, it's compounding improvement on all the players individually that played in last season's Champions League performance. Those are the ones that are really excelling the most right now. It's quite clear to see. But the first half went the way that we know it went, and so glad that we went in 2-1 up at half time. They obviously scored to make it 2-2 and was ruled off for offside, and I'm so glad that justice was done in that sense, because it really helped us keep somewhat in some sort of position of control coming into the second half. But they made a double change and they went for legs, okay? Rodgers, I think, read the situation quite well and was prepared to make a change as soon as maybe the game started to move away from us. And yeah, not long after the goal, once you've got guys prepared and scripted where you're going to go and all the rest of it, to bring Phillips on for Palma, I thought was an absolute masterstroke, because what it did then is it made us into a 3-5-2 and we went with Kyogo and Daizen up front. And I think me and a lot of other Celtic fans have been crying out for this. Having a midfield 3 of Paulo Bernardo, McGregor and O'Reilly worked a little bit better at that point, because Bernardo cannot cover the ground that Hatate covers. And that second goal that Morata scores, if you watch how they bring the ball out from the back with Koke from defence, if we had Hatate in the team, he would have been pressing in there. But Bernardo is so much more deeper. He allows Koke to get to the halfway line and find Llorente really easy, and Llorente eventually gets the assist for the goal. So after that happens, that kind of change there snuffs out that kind of new attack, that new route to goal that Atletico are going to try and use. And it gives us a bit more freedom to get the likes of McGregor and Johnson a bit higher up in the pitch, because I do feel this left-hand side of Atletico Madrid, we can really exploit that in the next game, and we exploited it to good effect in this game as well. So Phillips coming in on this side, I think, gave us a lot of extra kind of cover, and it did feel like he was maybe trying to impress once quite early on when he came on. It was like, just keep it simple, big man, just do your job. He did his job well enough, and going 3-5-2 when you're 2-1 down is, when it's 2 each, is something that we've been crying out for Celtic managers to be adventurous, to go for it. Ange Postecoglou was obviously famous for always attacking and always going, which was great. But guys like Rodgers, maybe other predecessors we don't need to name, is something they've not been terribly good at. And for the last 10 minutes, we've went with the pace of Forest to try and keep the energy up in this final third. And Forest has also got that experience at this game, at this level, against this type of opponent, where you know he's maybe not going to shank it or be overly selfish or whatever. So I get Forest coming on, but I would have liked, like I said earlier, I'd have liked to have seen Yang or O, someone with a wee bit more a wee bit more minutes under their belt, maybe a bit more sharper. I would have liked to have seen that. But I think overall, Brendan Rodgers mitigated against Atletico going 3-4-3 with their changes very well by going 3-5-2, and then as the game went on, it kind of felt like we turned into a bit more of a kind of 3-box-3, as all the scouts and all the cool kids would call it these days. So Maeda was like the lone pressing striker, like we see him do for Japan. We also had the wide players here in Taylor and Johnson, the back three we've named, and then we've seen kind of out of possession, watching out for Atletico transition in this kind of box midfield where Forrest wasn't wide, he was nice and narrow and tucked in very close to Daizen on occasion, and Bernardo did spring into these areas when we did have possession, but out of possession he was coming in really narrow. I think it might have been like this way around with McGregor and O'Reilly, because I know some people love to come into the comment section and shout about the odd thing that might just be slightly out of place. But again, really great tactical nous from the guys on the pitch, the preparation from the coaching staff and the manager, and it's great to see that this is a system that can be knocked out in a kind of throw the kitchen sink at it situation, or even variations of that same formation could be quite defensive, but still give you a bit of counter-attack threat. So like I say, I do think Rodgers brought a lot to the game as a manager, as a coaching department, and I do feel that the players individually, a lot of them really did step up. We've got 1 point out the first 3 games, which I don't think anyone would have wanted, expected, or forecasted, but if we did say we would get 1 point against Atletico at Celtic Park, you'd have probably took that. So the next game, we go to the Wanda Metropolitano. There's going to be no Rodrigo de Paul. He's going to be suspended for the game. And I think that left-hand side is very get-atable. Could we get another 2-each draw? I think we might. But then we go away to Lazio. And I think, the way that game went in the first the first head-to-head encounter, we're not going to be scared of Lazio. They just get beat 3-1 by Feyenoord. But guess what? Feyenoord really shouldn't have beat us either when we were away. And next time we get Feyenoord, we're going to be at home. That's going to be the last game of the group, and it's going to be absolute fireworks. Just a reminder again, guys, if you want to get involved in any ticket giveaways, make sure to follow me on all social media. On screen now, some other stuff that I've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys. Hail, hail, and stay out of trouble.